So our first session, as we get into our speakers, I'm excited to hear. This is an organization that was reborn recently, and it was reborn in a situation where two really different things existed for them. They were reborn in an era when standards had become fairly automated, when standards really did test hundreds of thousands of property records and payloads so they could depend on that certified data feed to have the standards in it that we've always wanted. And they were also reborn in a time when AI was already practical, when many of our organizations are looking for ways to use new AI technologies to work around the edges of our business and give us process improvements where we can find them. New companies can build from the foundation up that every product they build is based on AI and its capabilities from the start. So we're excited to hear from Broker Public Portal, Dan Troup and Tyler Olmstead.
Okay, is this thing on? We're good? I didn't do a mic check before. Tyler doesn't get to come up yet. We'll let him come up in a minute. I'm going to introduce him here in a minute. Thank you for having me again, Sam. I appreciate that. I look at those old photos. I wasn't in the oldest ones like some of the other people were in, but I want to take you back to that room real quick and what was being discussed in that room. And when we're in Chicago or we're in our board meetings, we're always talking about how we can make things better. And the passion amongst the people in this room and those rooms back there, we're all talking about how we can make things better for ourselves, for each other, for newcomers to this industry. Fast forward to today and yesterday in our board meeting, what were we discussing? How to make things better for this industry. So applaud the people who originally started this, who I wasn't there when it originally started, but I get to benefit from a lot of that work. And today you're gonna see some of those benefits, what we have today. So we called this session RESO to RAG. A shout out to Matt Purcell and my team for coming up with this term. It seems easy for us to maybe we should have called this RAGs to RESO, right? Like, why didn't we go that route? Well, because it's the opposite direction. We wouldn't be able to do RAG without RESO, okay? And I want to make sure that that's important. We were able to get started very quickly, create a consumer search application because RESO existed. And what you're going to hear today from a lot of people on stage is how they benefited from these standards. The work you put in, while very indirect and direct, has great outcomes. Before I get started too, I just want to ask, anybody heard the term RAG before? Okay, a few of you, great. So we could jump into a serious nerdy conversation here in the beginning. It stands for Retrieval-Augmented Generation. And it's how a lot of people are using AI today to produce answers and to produce solutions, and we too are using that. We decided to break this session up though, and not go super nerdy right here in the beginning, even though I like to keep things weird, and RESO is a place where we like to keep things weird and nerdy. So we're gonna show you some of the outcomes of that work. But if you wanna know more about how we implemented RAG, you can join us on Thursday. We have a session on Thursday morning with Matt Purcell and Brian Tran from our team. This is our team. We're a very small team. And I think what you're seeing today is what can a small team create. But I also want to talk just a little teeny bit about BPP. Broker Public Portal started 10 years ago. In my last session, I talked about us being the skunk works of real estate, being able to create things very fast, very quick on behalf of the industry. What you see today and what you'll see in this demo today is not mine. It's not Tyler's, it's not Matt's, it's not Brian's. It belongs to you as the industry. Who is the BPP? We're made up of about 50 MLSs and 50 brokers. And if you are a broker or an MLS, you can still join the BPP today and take advantage of this technology. For this session, we really wanted to talk about, and what we've been thinking about, is what does the future of search experience look like? We even see other people asking this question. Is it a chat interface? What is it? And today we wanted to kind of share our vision for this and how you can take advantage as well. And I'd like to introduce Tyler Olmstead from our team, our head of product, who's going to run you through what we think the future of search looks like. Please welcome Tyler.
All right.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. I made Dan reintroduce me. I wanted my own applause. Thanks, you guys. It's a really exciting time when I think about this concept of data-driven search experiences. And I've been doing this prop tech thing for a long time. And with RESO standards, I mean, listen, I remember way back in the day when we used to get CSVs of the data in there, and it was just a free-for-all. So having the adoption that Sam was talking about today on what we're seeing from across these MLS boards, the international community is very exciting. We're actually able to develop towards this standard, and it's certainly changing the way we think about this. So as we think about this concept of the evolution of user interfaces and how we've interacted back with computers, it's getting to a place where we're getting more and more natural. I think back to the way the mouse and keyboard revolutionized things, and then eventually the touchscreen. And now we're seeing another precipice of that interaction becoming even more natural, even more intuitive to how we're thinking about things. And we truly find ourselves in another inflection point where the building blocks of that next interface are starting to shape. So what does this actually look like? Well, I think there are three main things we can think about. Since the advent of ChatGPT, we've gotten really comfortable with how we talk to and respond back to our applications. And we're seeing that change on a day-to-day basis. I'm hearing things like, let's go ChatGPT it instead of let's go Google it. Now that really is a revolution. I mean, we've talked about Googling things for going on 20 years right now. It's become ubiquitous for how we interact with computers. But Google understands this, and we're seeing this in our search results today. This is called what I like to say is the answer interface. Anytime you're typing into something in Google, we're seeing a chat-style answer come at the top of the page via Gemini and starting to really get a deeper dive from a human-readable standpoint on what those search results might look like. And as we become more and more comfortable speaking to our applications, things like Alexa, Siri, and even just talking to your ChatGPT app on your phone, that conversational tone is becoming paramount to the experience that we have in these applications. Okay, so what does that mean for home search? How will home search take advantage of these new interfaces and start to build the building blocks for what we are doing in type of prop tech? Today, when we go to home search, it feels very overwhelming, right? There's a million MLS fields to search by. How do we get to do exactly what we're looking for? The navigation feels antiquated at this point. And we're not really getting to the true human readable place that we want to with these experiences. And we see a lot of these major portals building these experiences that, in my opinion, are funneling towards you this one path where they want you to search in a certain way. This is something I like to call the 90-10 rule, right? What do I mean by this? 90% of searches that are conducted today use 10% of the available filters. Think about that. That's such a small subset of what we have available for our users to look by. And the other thing that's interesting is the concept of this. The user interfaces are built around this, right? So if we look at a lot of the major portals, we see things like status, property type, price, beds, bath. And I understand these are really, truly the core fields that when we're beginning our search, these are what we want to start with, and that's why we build towards these interfaces. But there's so much left on the table. We're not really understanding and giving the hopes and dreams of what that search experience might look like. Now, as users start to use the interface more and they're searching longer for properties, we understand that the intent goes up for what they're trying to do. And as we do this, the fields that we're actually searching by become really, really cumbersome. This is something I like to call checkbox fatigue. How am I supposed to navigate and find some of those more nuanced search fields when this is the interface I'm dealing with? We need to create a search experience that truly meets the user where they are and able to facilitate those hopes and dreams of what they're searching for. It actually kind of reminds me of a quote I like from one of my favorite product pontificators. A great search experience doesn't just teach a user how to search, it learns how a user wants to search and gets out of their way. Now think about that. We need to find something intuitive that they don't have to think about. And honestly, that's the face you can trust from anyone. So how do we think about this? How do we get away from checkbox fatigue? If I were to ask you how you were searching for a home, you may say something like, I'm looking for a house with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, up to 700K, 1,800 square feet, right? It's conversational. You're telling me the criteria that's important to you. So let's build an interface that feels intuitive and can facilitate this idea. Now we're beginning to see this already take shape in a lot of aspects. This is something I call one search bar to rule them all. The concept here is we're simplifying the user interface. We're using a more Google-style chat where you can type in and easily see the results you're looking for. But I think there's a problem here. what we're doing is we're mixing ideas. Today, the user is trained. These are location search autocompletes. So when you start typing in things like 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and you don't get that feedback, you don't get that autocomplete result, you're not facilitating the experience they're used to. You're trying to retrain them on something they already know. I think this is a miss, and I think we can do better. Once we actually start to get to the results, it's often nebulous at actually what we're looking for. In this particular case, what search filters didn't I match on? Show me the results that I'm looking for. How is that reflected in the query that I put in there? Then when we actually get to the results, this is something I'm commonly seeing. It's called ranked choice matching. The concept here is that when you type in one of those sentences that has the more natural feel, we give you a percentage match on what we were able to match with. But what does that even mean? I have no interface to understand what that is. I can't interact with it. Editing becomes cumbersome. And again, 96% match on what? The user is often having to discover what that means without it feeling fluid and being an intuitive experience on what they want. We think about this a little bit differently. Now, as we came to this, we wanted to approach it in 3 main pillars, and I want to talk about those real quickly. First, it was understanding the input tool. It needed to feel familiar, it needed to feel conversational, and we didn't want to retrain the user. This was paramount to making sure the adoption was there and that we were getting the user to what they ultimately wanted. With so much technology today, LLMs became a great tool in our tool set. So we start to use those as we take those queries in, turn them into the search fields we're looking for, and move on to our next step. Finally, we get to that RESO RAG. Now, we've trained this on the RESO standards because we're able to do that. We can take that search query that we've used from our LLM, associate those back to the fields, and give a really meaningful experience and user interface back to our users. Listen, I'm taking a really high level on this. Dan already mentioned it, but Matt and Brian are going to really look under the hood, show you exactly the mechanics of how this works on Thursday. I highly encourage you to check this out if this interests you. It's really something we're excited about as we move forward. So as we think about this, we wanted to deeply understand the needs of our users. And as we did this, we started with buyers and sellers. They're going to be our most paramount customers as they come onto the platform. So check this out. This is kind of how we started to think about the user interface. This should feel very normal to you. As you look at home search, we wanted the familiarity to be there. We see those 10% fields at the top, like property type, price, bath, and a way to search for location. But there's that big red smart filter button. And this is where we start to take a different approach. In this example here, I'm going to go ahead and add that button and start to put in one of those natural searches I'm looking for. Single family home, 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 700K, 1,800 square feet. So what's happening here? We're running through the system. It's making that association back to the fields. We're using those standards, and the user interface is updating in the way we're looking at. Those 10% fields we talked about are updating based on that query, but right next to that button, we see that little pill, minimum living room area, 1,800 square feet. This is where the magic starts to happen. We're looking past those 10% fields. We're able to query on a nuanced way to look what they're looking for. Now users are naturally able to enter in some of the information they're trying to find, and we're able to match those back to the fields that we're associating to. So we have to think about different ways they're going to search. I gave you a good example of what it might look like if we're doing a human breathable sentence, but everyone remembers those rail or shorthands back when we used to put things in newspapers, right? 1 BD, 2 BA, 700K, 1,800. We have to be smart enough to understand what that means from a shorthand perspective. In the same way you saw that happen before, we can leverage those LLMs, those models that we're training, and update an interface in that same way. We have to come at them from every angle to understand what they're doing. And when I talk about understanding and meeting them where they're at, I mean the language too. In the same way that we could put those types of things in English, we should be able to facilitate any language. In this case, I'm putting in French, same search criteria, bedroom, bathroom, square feet, and we see that interface updating right away. But we have to go beyond that, right? French is something that we can see and read very easily. But what about languages that are more logographic and alphabetic languages like Hebrew? In this example here, we can see that we had that same experience. Putting in Hebrew language, same search criteria, the model's able to understand. We're meeting the user where they're at. We're showing them the results they're looking for based on the types of searches that they're doing. Now we want to go beyond just those simple queries. We want to understand what the professionals are doing, what our power users are doing on there. So we started to talk to agents, brokers, real estate investors, what are the unique needs they have when they're looking for searches? The first thing we want to do is variable criteria, right? In this example, I want to search by something like price reduced and days on market. But what? Price reduced by 10%, days on market 100 days. These are user variable choices that we can now create on-the-fly search terms based off of here. So as I enter in my human readable sentence, very quickly we're going to be able to match on that data. We're going to enter in those pills I talked about before. So what do we see? Price reduced change, 10%, days on market 100. Think about how powerful that is. They're not opening another search form, they're not having to scroll through a bunch of checkboxes, and very quickly we're able to create search in a meaningful way to get them back results. Next, we thought a lot about listing agents. When listing agents want to see that their own listings and understand how they're coming back in search results for them, this is a cumbersome experience. Why not create a search term based on those agents? Very quickly, I could add in here the listing agent's name. We can use that as a customized search term. And very quickly, we now see Eduardo's listings coming back just for him. We can also extend the same courtesy to the offices as well. So anytime we're getting real estate data back on the listing, we can create customized search terms for what we do and add back in there. I want to talk about negation handling. This is a hard one. Let me give you an example. When you go back to that idea that I was talking with rank choice, if you were to enter in something like HOA, no HOA, chances are it's going to treat it the same way. And from my experience, when you start clicking on those listings and you're starting no HOA, you're coming back with an HOA every time. This is a miss. If I say I don't want a backyard, it's a very different search term than I want a backyard. This is something we thought deeply about as we started to build out our model. In this example, let's go to HOA. So I'm going to start off and I'm going to type in no HOA. Our search results are updated. And as we look here quickly at the listing details page, we're going to notice that we're actually not seeing any HOA coming back to the property. Exactly what we're looking for. Now, what about the opposite? What if I'm looking for an area that does have an HOA? Right away, we type in it has HOA. It's going to update our pill from HOA no to yes. And quickly, as we look at our listing details page, we're actually coming back with listings with an HOA. This feels intuitive. This feels exactly what you're looking for and something that we're not yet seeing in the interfaces of today. Let's take this same concept with pool. Pool's an interesting one. Because as a pool, you have community pool, you have private pool, you have has pool, yes, no. How do we think about these more holistically? Well, in this example, I'm putting in has pool, and all the listings are updating. We're seeing these come back. And now I'm going to do the negation, no pool. I don't really know why you wouldn't want a pool, but if you have the opportunity, you should probably get one. But in this case, we're seeing those results get updated yet again. This is the kind of interface that needs to feel intuitive. That behind-the-scenes magic, those hours we put in to make sure this is working, should not be present. They should feel fluid, they should feel easy, and they should feel something you want to use over and over again. We're really excited about this technology, but we don't want to stop there. On our roadmap today, location. We know that this is something users want to add in and search more naturally with that same checkbox, right? I'm looking for a property in Denver with no HOA, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. We want to solve this problem in a really meaningful way, not only from a data perspective, but also from the user interface perspective. If we go back to what I talked about, mixing results, understanding this idea of an autocomplete, it's got to feel natural. We can't expect the user to be retrained every time they're looking at these. Next, we want to do intent matching. Integrate more things like POI data in there. I'm looking for a property close to a dog park. I'm looking for something with great schools. If we could start understanding this geospatial area of where these listings are and turn those into search terms, we're having a really powerful experience back to the user. Lastly, but most importantly, is our feedback loop. This is something we call supervised fine-tuning. As we get more feedback in real time from the users, from thumbs up, thumbs down scenarios, from giving us feedback from searches that didn't work, and just being able to track these popular search terms, this goes back and trains the model. And this is really interesting because unlike any technology before, the model is constantly learning. It's learning from the interactions they have from the users. It's getting better and better each time. And that's something that's really exciting when you think about it from a data perspective. This is something we're really excited about. We love to talk about. If you find us in the lobby, please come chat our ear off. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you guys so much.